Hello and welcome to Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable, where I discuss the future of our region, humongously blessed with hydrocarbon resources. Every week, we give some time to reflecting on topics relevant to the development of the region and the people. Now, this episode is no different. I'm here once again to focus on how to take our region to a more promising future. And to remember, the program is sponsored by the operator of the NNPC SPDC Total Energies Achip Joint Venture, the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited, headquartered in Port Harcourt. Thanks for joining. I'm Adedayo Shakin. Our topic on today's or this week's edition of the podcast is understanding autism. World Autism Awareness Day was officially recognized by the United Nations in 2007. The choice of April 2nd underscores the importance of early diagnosis and intervention. Autism, or Autism Spectrum Disorder (ASD), is a complex developmental condition characterized by differences in social interaction, communication, and behavior. It affects individuals differently and to varying degrees, making each person's experience unique. The global observance of World Autism Awareness Day aims to promote a deeper understanding of autism, highlight the importance of research and early intervention, and advocate for policies that support the inclusion and well-being of individuals with autism. It also serves as a platform to celebrate the achievements and contributions of people with autism, showcasing their abilities and potentials. In today's episode, we'll explore the scientific aspect of autism, discuss the latest advancement in research, possibly, and therapy, and share inspiring stories of individuals who have overcome challenges and made significant contributions to their communities. We'll also examine the role of support systems, education, and advocacy in improving the quality of life for those with autism. To join us as we honor World Autism Awareness Day and work towards a more inclusive and supportive society for everyone. Again, the topic for this episode on Canvas is understanding autism. And my guest is Mercy Emmanuel Wogu. Now, Mercy Emmanuel Wogu is a certified autism specialist and applied behavioral analyst, a communication therapy and disability specialist, as well as a certified caregiver for the elderly. She is the CEO, founder of Utmost Care and Therapy Services Limited, UT-CATS, and Utmost Care and Neurodevelopmental Foundation, UCANF. Mercy Emmanuel Wogu, hi, welcome to Converse the Niger-Delta Roundtable.
Thank you so much. I'm pleased to be here.
Or should I say, welcome again? Because I had you on the podcast just a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
and we were discussing Down syndrome.
Down
It
syndrome.
was
Yeah.
also in commemoration of World
Down
Down
syndrome day.
Syndrome Day. And then a few weeks afterwards, we're here again discussing autism in commemoration of World Autism Syndrome Day. Uh, I, I, I sometimes say this to some of my guests who come on for to record any episode, thanking them for their time because I know they're busy. Whenever I say it, I really do mean it. And I know you have an extremely busy schedule, so I appreciate your making our time to be here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, let's get right to it then. Um, I know I asked you a similar question when we recorded the other episode on Down syndrome. And then for anyone who may have missed that out, you can, by the way, go on the YouTube page, on any of our other social media platforms, and you can watch that episode as well on Down syndrome. It's quite fascinating, elucidating for me personally, and I'm sure for others also. I would ask you a similar question as I asked you back then. What is the difference between Down syndrome and autism? Because I perceive, and I do confess for quite some time, even myself, thought that they were maybe the same or quite similar or couldn't even draw any differences. Are they different?
Okay. Let me start by telling you what autism is all about in a very few sentences. Autism is a developmental disorder that's come to be as a result of differences in the brain. So it's a neurological disorder. While it is characterized by a lot of things, I know we'll come to that. Why Down syndrome is a chromosomal abnormalities has to do with its genetics. Okay, it has to do with is a certified genetic disorder. And looking at the physique of a person who has Down syndrome and a person who has autism, there is no Down syndrome comes with a lot of physical distortions. Okay, so once you see a child with Down syndrome, looking at the person's face and the other body features, you will get it clear that this is Down syndrome. But if you see a child with autism, there are no physical distortions. In fact, they are always beautiful, handsome, but it's only when they display, you will get, or when you try to engage them, you will know that, I think there is something that is not all as it ought to be with this child. But just looking at them from a distance, you see them perfect, beautiful, handsome, no physical distortions. Everything is looking so well. The eyes are entered, the nose are entered, the ears are entered. That's just pure autism without other comorbidities. There are a case where you have a child who has a trait of autism and Down syndrome. But we're talking about typical a non autistic child, a child that has autism and a child that has Down syndrome. There's physical difference. Autism is neurological, while Down syndrome is chromosomal abnormalities.
So, besides the handsome feature that some autistic or autistic children have,
Yeah.
besides the handsome feature, I could be autistic as well.
Yes, you could be.
I don't mean in another world or in another universe. I mean, right now, this dial seated opposite you right now,
Okay.
I could be autistic.
If you have the features, if you have the characteristics.
No, that's what I'm saying. So I could actually be autistic in spite of all the traits that I am uh, showcasing, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
right now. I could
Mm-hmm.
actually be autistic.
You could.
How is that possible? I feel quite normal. I think I talk normal. I think I act normal. I think normal. How could I be autistic
Just
now?
looking at you without engaging you, I could also say you are autistic. But if I engage you and I look at there are four characteristics, I look at maybe you do not have any social impairment, your communication is intact, you don't have repetitive behavior, you don't have a sensory processing disorder, and I'll say you don't meet up with a match.
I do have some
That
repetitive behavior.
yeah, you have repetitive behavior. What is the is it challenging? A behavior is only challenging when the intensity and the frequency at which that behavior is being exhibited is high. So, even among the children with autism, it's not every behavior that is challenging. I will always tell parents, it's not everything you want to change about the child when it comes to repetitive behavior, except if it is challenging. If it's not challenging, there are other things that we could focus on. For instance, a child who would just want to uh, flap the hand once in a day, and you are telling me that I should overlook the flap, I should focus on flapping of the hand instead of focusing on the communication impairment that the child has. Are you getting me?
Mm.
So, to me, as a professional, the communication impairment is challenging because the child is not able to use language to communicate. Which one should I work on in my scale of preference? Should I work on the child that is nonverbal, that is not able to use one word to communicate? Possibly they are not even prelingual skills. Or should I focus on the child that will just go to a corner and flap for a minute once a day? So you can see that the flapping of the hand is not as challenging as not being able to use language to communicate. So the behavior of not being able to use language to communicate is more challenging because the intensity is high, the frequency is high. So I work on it first. I can ignore that of flapping once a day.
What if the
So
child
if you
has
don't
to?
have challenging behaviors, if you don't have a communication impairment, your social interaction is intact, You are not obsessed. You don't have restricted interest. You are not on the spectrum.
So what if the child has to flap their hands more than once a day? Maybe every time the child has to flap their hands, the child has to flap it a number of times before the child can move on to
If the
something else.
intensity is high, if the frequency is high, we'll work on it. We'll check what's that flapping of hand. That's what we call behavior analysis. That's where ABA comes in. The function of that behavior. Why is the child flapping their hand? Are you getting it? Why is the child flapping their hand? What is the function of that flapping of hand doing to the child that is making the child to do it? So by the time you check out the function, you find out the function of the child, you know that that behavior is not socially inappropriate, then you have to replace. You do a replacement behavior with what is more socially appropriate that will also give the child that satisfaction. Because the core thing is that the child needs that satisfaction that the flapping of hand gives. But the behavior that he or she is using to get that satisfaction is what is not socially appropriate. So I'm going to look out for what is socially appropriate that will also give that input to the child. Because except the child gets that input, that flapping of hand would not stop. So I will do a replacement behavior that will still give that satisfaction and is socially appropriate.
What could be a replacement behavior for flapping of hands?
Flapping of hand could be as a result of that. The child is feeling less, is not feeling balance with the hands, with the fingers. And so when he does that, he has some energy inputs.
By the way, flapping of hands is this, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You
all
see
right.
them do this.
Well,
So,
if you can't see what we're doing, you're probably listening via the
so
radio.
you see
So
them.
go watch the podcast. This is what we're doing.
So you
Okay.
see that flapping, flapping, flapping. So when you flap, you see that you get some energy, some vibes. So I could look for what will give the child that input. So I could do some hands-on activities that will strengthen the motors, the fine motors. I could engage the child in frequent painting that will give that movement as well. And once when the feeling is satisfied, you see the behavior drops.
Okay, I mentioned earlier, I have some repetitive behavior as well. Some, I don't think I'd want to mention all of them, but for example, maybe this one's a little less embarrassing. I find that I just start grinding my teeth unnecessarily so. I'm not chewing anything, I'm not eating, I'm just grind. And then I catch myself doing it, and then I stop. But later on, I might find myself doing it again. Re- does that make me autistic?
Yeah, you grind it. In fact, the grinding of teeth, you also see some children on the spectrum grind their teeth. Medically, maybe a doctor will have the implication of what it is. But for me, as an ABA person, I will check out why is the child grinding the teeth. Is it because the child likes the feeling when I grind my teeth, the feeling I have in my orals, in one of my articulators, which is the teeth? Or do I like the sound that I'm hearing when I grind my teeth? So I'm going to analyze these two things. Which one is making the child, the individual, to engage in such behavior? When I find out, I'm going to do something, do a replacement behavior.
So my question is this: we're talking me now. I grind my teeth every now and then. I catch myself. I don't know when I started, but I catch myself doing it. Does that make me autistic?
You are not that alone cannot make you to be an autistic person.
Okay.
Because autism has 4 major characteristics, which
Okay.
is what I'm going to mention again.
Let's go into that.
Yeah, autism has 4 major characteristics, and they come in. There's a percentage to which you do that. One is communication impairment. You are not communicationally impaired. You don't have communication impairment. You communicate well. You use your senses. Your communication is functional. You are able to engage in receptive language and expressive language. Your articulations are intact. So your communication skill is intact. Then let's look at the other aspect, which is social integration. I think you socially integrate. You integrate with your peers, you integrate with those that are older than you integrate with your environment. You do not engage in isolated play. What do I mean by isolated play? You just go to a corner, only you talk to yourself, you play all by yourself. You do not do parallel play. When others are playing, you are just doing something different from what others are doing. Your social interaction is in place, which is one of the characteristics of autism, they have social integration impairment. And then they have this obsessive and restrictive interest. For instance, you could see a child, normally when children come into an environment, let's say with toys, they tend to explore, right? They take a car toy, oh, they see an aeroplane, they might drop that and look at this, peek, try to explore, play with the toys age appropriately. But you could see a child on the spectrum who just comes in and go pick a red spoon and hold on to it. He doesn't want to let it go. He doesn't, in fact, he can go to instead of sleeping with it, he can hold it for days before we'll let go, maybe find another one. So that restricted interest is there. Are you displaying that? No. Then we have the repetitive behavior, which is what you are having. So if you get 1/4 and the repetitive behavior is just with one, others could have series of repetitive behavior. You see the child looking at the spinning fan, running from one corner to another, flapping, screaming at intervals. All those are repetitive behaviors. But you are just having the grinding of teeth. Let me ask you a question back. Are you autistic? With my explanation,
No,
do you?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I don't think
so that is it. You have to look at those things.
No.
They are in degrees, and they are in degrees, and that also brings us to the levels. Not just to diagnose a child that a child has autism. There's level 1, there's level 2, there's level 3. Level 1 is the mildest form of it, is the lowest one. Then level 3 is the severe. At level 3, the person might need support throughout lifetime, So they are in degrees.
Okay. Just as a slight digression. I mean, don't mind we're talking about me right now. So what could I have if I'm grinding my teeth and I have other repetitive behavior? That could be a sign of what?
That could be a sign of behavioral abnormalities.
Yeah, which is what?
Which is the grinding of teeth that
Yeah,
you are
what is
having.
the
It could also
behavioral
be a deficient.
abnormality?
I think I also heard that when people grind their teeth, they could be deficient of one mineral or the other. But I don't
Okay.
know. That's pure
Could it
medicine
be
for those.
obsessive compulsive something
It
disorder?
could also be a coping mechanism for you.
Uh,
Do you get that? It could also be a coping mechanism for you. Have you tried to find out, when do I do this? Maybe when I get to think deep.
I'm a deep thinker.
Maybe when you get to think deep, so you are lost temporarily because you are in a deep thought and you see yourself grinding your teeth.
How about
To think
how
deeper.
about OCD? Could I have OCD?
OCD is a disorder on its own.
Could I have OCD?
If you are obsessed with things must be done, arranged, yeah, you have OCD.
Okay,
But I don't know you that much, so I have not
okay,
seen you
okay.
outside the
Maybe
studio.
we'll have to schedule a session or something.
Yeah, you need to pay for a section.
Oh, come on now. Oui. Okay. Why is autism referred to as a spectrum disorder?
Yeah, it's a spectrum, just like you heard the word spectrum. It's because of the wide range of the autism and the varieties of characteristics an individual presents. The wide range and the varieties an individual present. There's a saying that goes that if you see one child on the spectrum, if you see one individual on the spectrum, you have just seen that one. There is no uniformity in the pattern of their characteristics. Just like you say, okay, somebody has this, so this is how it comes. If you have malaria, you run fever, you have this, you have that. No, it's with autism. If you see one person that has autism, you have just seen that one person. But I will always tell people that in as much as there are varieties in the characteristics, but the four things that I have mentioned, the social impairment, communication impairment, repetitive behavior, and they are there. But with individuals, they differ. They differ. So you could see a child who has communication impairment and is totally non-verbal. You see another one who is able to repeat, is engaging in being a echoic. What do I mean by being a echoic? If I say, how are you? The child says, how are you? He's not processing. He doesn't have the response to say, to process, how are you? Okay, I'm being asked, how are you? My response should be, I'm good, I'm fine. Okay? So you get the child, give you back, how are you? And you see those that They have the language, but the language is not functional. Are you getting it? It's not functional in the sense that when they need water, in as much as they can say water, they cannot come to you and say, Daddy, can I have some water? They can't come to you and say, water, please. But they have the capacity to say water. So they have the language, but they are not functionally using it. All of those are communication impairments. So you could see the children come up with different levels of peculiarities in their communication, still on the spectrum. All of them still have communication impairments. So the wide range and the varieties in the characteristic they present in an individual is why it is called autism spectrum disorder. When you meet one person with autism, you have just met that one person with his or her uniqueness.
What are the known causes or risk factors associated with autism?
The risk factor, when we look at, let's look at the family history. These are just tentative research work that has come on the family history. They say that the research has shown that if a family has a child with autism, there's a tendency that they will have another child with autism. So that brings us to genetics. That brings us to traits that could be transferable. And then there's the other one that says about the age of the parent. This time around, the father. When we talk about the Down syndrome, the age was on the mother's side. But with autism, the age is on the father's side. So if the father is of age, there is a tendency that they might have a child with autism. Then we also look at the birth, pregnancy and birth. Okay, pregnancy and birth. Complications at pregnancy can also result in one deformity that will lead to a child being autistic. And also during birth, when a child is born, that first cry, that prompt cry that you just heard activates the system of the child. Send the oxygen to the various systems and say, hey, the child is alive now. Everything is working. It's like a switch in the child's system. Everything. The cry activates all the system. If there is a delay in the child crying, no matter the minutes, the seconds, the hour, it affects because it does not allow that oxygen to circulate and activate other parts. So within that period of delay, the child crying, there could be a lot of things that will happen in the brain that could lead the child having traits of autism.
So if a
And
child,
then environmental as well. Environmental, they say there are some toxicity in the air that could also lead to an individual having autism. These are the risk factors so far that research has brought up, but there is no stamp
Mm.
to them.
So there's speculation. They're
Yeah.
speculative at best.
Yes.
We don't know for certain.
Yes.
So just to happen one of those factors quickly before we move on. The part about the child crying, that's a
Yeah.
newborn.
Yeah.
Um, so I've never been in one of those rooms where a child is born, but I've seen videos where doctors or attendants or nurses have to smack the child
Yeah.
a couple of times. So you're saying in those instances where the newborn has to be smacked a few times before we hear the cry, uh, that child, something could have gone wrong in those seconds and the
It's
child could
very
become
possible.
autistic.
It's very possible.
Mm.
Like when I consult and I'm taking birth history, this is part of the question we asked in the profession. Was there any delay of cry at birth? Do you get that? So you want to know if there's any delay so that you know that maybe it was during that time. Sometimes the parents come to tell you the pregnancy period was not eventful, there was no complication, everything was all good. But at birth, the child did not cry for like an hour. The child was made to cry.
So how is autism diagnosed then? And at what age can it typically be identified?
When you talk about the diagnosis of autism, you want to look at the developmental screening. The developmental screening from 18 to 24 months. This is what is American Academy of Pediatrics have said 18 to 24 months. you could be able to diagnose a child. And you can look at it from the angle of developmental screening. What do I mean by developmental screening? You look at 18 months, there are developmental milestones a child is supposed to meet up, like having imitation skill. We call them prelingual skill. Those are the skills that the child have. You know that the child has the capacity to use language to communicate. There are 9 of them. Prelingual skills like imitation. The child, if I say bread, the child should be able to say bread. If I say mommy, the child should say mommy. That's imitation. Turn taking. If I roll a ball to a child, should roll a ball back to me. You get that? And then there are 9 of them in code. Maybe I have time for me to mention all of them. But those skills are there. The child should be when you stretch out your hand to carry a child, the child has that cognition to stretch back. He knows that I want to be carried. So is a response to that. Okay. So you look at all those factors from 18 to 24 months. We are going by the developmental screening. You look at the milestones with language, look at the milestones with the physical aspect, look at the milestones with the cognition. So those are developmental screening. If you want to go higher, in case you're not satisfied with what you have seen in the developmental screening, then you look at a more comprehensive evaluation, that has to do with where you use standardized tests. Like we have what we call the CAS. The CAS is a childhood autism screening rate that you use from is used for 18 months to 5 years. For that one, there's a higher one for those that are older. Those are standardized tests that has been documented. So you ask questions from the parents' observation. So in your comprehensive evaluation test, you are looking at standardized tests, you are looking at observational tests, you are looking at using checklist and questionnaire from the parents to do all that. Then there's a pure clinical aspect where the child is being statemented by a neurologist. Okay, the neurologists have their own checklists and standardized tests they use to check, and then they're able to come up and say, oh, this child has level 1 autism, this child has level 2 autism, this child has level 3 autism. They have their standardized tests. But speaking as a therapist, you look at that developmental screening, you look at a more comprehensive evaluation. For the one of the clinical, the doctors and neurologists are in charge of that.
Why is early diagnosis and intervention important?
Early diagnosis is very important because at that early stage, you are able to recover. When you start intervention at the early stage, say what I have to like 18 to 24 months or 3 years, till 18 to 3 years is still early intervention. So it helps to facilitate the recovery of the child. Just like I think there's an adage that says you do not learn the usage of left hand at old age. So if the child comes to you early at the right place, I'm emphasizing at the right place. That means coming to people that know the strategies to use to recover that child early enough. Yeah,
So
it's very
autism,
important.
so autism can be cured.
There is no cure. Autism is managed using different forms of therapies. Is a multidisciplinary aspect. That's why I say different forms of therapies. That means the speech and language is there, the occupational therapist is there. So it's a multidisciplinary approach. As I'm sitting down here, there is no cure to autism, but they can be managed to have optimal living using different forms of therapy intervention.
Speaking of management, what are some of these therapies? I know you mentioned them, just a
Yeah.
little
Like
elaboration.
for a child who is not talking, the child will need a speech and language therapist or a communication therapist, where you have to groom the child from speech to functional speaking. A child who is having poor motor skills, is not able to write, is having some sensory processing disorder, would definitely need an occupational therapist who handles the as basic living self-help skills, is able to potty train the child, is able to help the child to feed his or herself, is able to help the child in basic self-help skills like dressing, toileting, and all that. And if the child has some sensory processing disorder, it doesn't understand what the senses that the brain, the message is sending to the brain. And so those things leading to behaviors that are not socially appropriate. Occupational therapist is there. Then we have an ABA therapist, applied behavior analysis, that deals with the behaviors. that handles the behavior. We have the psychologist, we have we have an educationist, the special needs educationist in the classrooms and all that. So it's a team of professionals that come together to develop a plan after the child has been assessed to work and harness the child to the next level to meet up with the expected milestones.
It is Canvas the Niger-Delta Roundtable brought to you by SPDC in commemoration of World Autism Day, April 2nd. We're discussing understanding autism. We'll go for a break. We'll return in a moment. Do please stay with us.
Our yellow and black markers indicate pipeline and flow line right-of-way boundaries. Your activity could impact on the buried high-pressure hydrocarbon pipelines and flow lines, leading to possible leaks and explosion. Please keep off. Do not engage in sand mining or any form of excavation, pipeline vandalism, oil theft, and bush burning within pipeline and flow line right-of-way. Do not farm, trade, or locate any business on pipeline and flow line right-of-way. It is against the law to apportion land, sell, or build on pipeline and flow line right-of-way. Maintain a setback distance of at least 30 meters or about 100 feet from the right-of-way boundaries always. We care for your safety and that of the environment.
This message is brought to you by the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited, SPDC, operator of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC Limited, Total Energies, and Ajib Joint Venture.
Welcome back. It is Canvas the Niger-Delta Roundtable, and we're discussing understanding autism. My guest is Mercy Emmanuel Wogu. You're welcome again.
Thank you.
Great. And thank you for joining us as well. For parents and caregivers, how can they support the early development of a child with autism?
Okay, let me start with the parents. It is very, very important that as a parent, when you are at a child-giving stage, you should look out for the normal milestones that's the milestones without deviation. If you know what is obtainable when your child is 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, you look at the milestones that you expect to see. And there is any deviation, please just go to the right place. You can go to the clinic. Try to see a neurologist. So with that, they are able to fast track and say, okay, the child is not meeting up with the milestones. Or look for a special needs consultant. Look at the child for you. They'll be able to pick up. So if a parent is knowledgeable of the expected milestones, if the deviation should pick up, she will be able to notice that on time. So knowledge, parents should to seek for knowledge as a child-giving mom, as a child-giving dad. Seek out for knowledge with what you expect your child to do in 1 year, in 2 years. So when there's deviation, you know. And then when the next thing is going to the right place. You might say, oh, I have met people, their children are 17 years, and they say they've never heard anything of therapy. So seek out for knowledge. Today we are in the technology age, and you know. And then when the next thing is going to the right place. You might say, oh, I have met people, their children are 17 years, and they say they've never heard anything of therapy. So seek out for knowledge. Today we are in the technology age. You could browse. You could read. I've heard, in fact, 50% or 60 to 50% of our client right now, you hear them say, we got good, we got your contact online. And then they come because they need the help. So check out for the right place to take your child to. And for caregivers or therapists or educationists, seek for the right knowledge. Do not take what you don't have the capacity to do, because another challenge I have seen in the profession is, parents are able to sort themselves. They notice the deviation, they source for help. But when they brought the child to the professional, the supposed to be professional, they find out that they do not have the knowledge to impart on that child. to enhance the child's skills. So for caregivers therapists, I will advise that they should seek for the right knowledge. Go to build yourself up so that when these children are being brought to you, you have the capacity to improve the child's skills. So knowledge is very important. Knowledge and passion. Please, let's not do it for money. I know some of us will do this for money. We take a whole lot of money, but you don't have what it takes to. So parents will say, oh, I have been here for 10 years. My child is still at the same level. I've been here for 2 years. There's no change. I know that there are severities, there are severe cases, there are different levels. I also know that some parents are not too patient enough to, but let it be that you know what to do. And little by little that the child is improving. Knowledge is key. Caregivers, parents, let's seek for knowledge. Let's not be in the dark.
Yeah, but specialists like yourself have bills to pay also. So I mean, you still have to get
Yes,
paid.
yes. We are not saying that we should do the work free. Bills are to be paid. The therapies are to be paid. I do tell people that, you know that sometimes these parents pay heavily because what you will pay a staff handling one child is likely what a class teacher. In fact, sometimes we pay way higher than the class teacher that is managing like 15 children.
Mm.
You get to say that.
Speaking of class teachers, what educational approaches are best suited for children with autism?
Inclusion, we will still preach the inclusion, but at various levels, depending on the severity of the case. Are you getting that? So when we look at what is the uniqueness of this child, the other time I talked about the different types of inclusion, where you have to, the whole children are in the same classroom and a child is being pulled out to address the unique, the special needs that the child has, which is a pull-out session. I also talked about the part where they are all in the same facility, but there is a block allocated for the special needs. So they are there, and during playtime, they all come out for social integration. And there's also another one where they are not all in the same building, in the same facility. Like we have the center base where all of them come in and they are being attended to based on their uniqueness, each child, one-on-one intervention. Okay, so that place serves like a breeding ground where when they have come up to a certain level, we might send back to school for school method of inclusive education. There is also the stage where we look at the age of the child, because if the child is at transition age, let's say 9 to 17, and there is no skill, the child has no basic skill, is not toilet trained, is not, then the center base is what is better for that child, because there you are looking at vocational skills. Vocational skills. Would the child be able to sew? Would the child be able to do videography? Would the child be able to take some pictures? Would the child be able to do some work with the computer? Would the child play some musical instrument, painting, hair cutting? So you are grooming the child, because for me, what is important is if the child can cut hair, I'll probably open a salon. Will you allow him to cut your hair and get paid? Does the child know money value? Is he able to make check and balances? If I if I give 1,000 naira and I cut my hair for 500, will the child be able to work out the balance? If that is okay and the child has a skill, fine, we are good to be employed.
Okay.
So inclusive education is based on, to do what is best for the child is based on the uniqueness. Some are good with a school inclusion setting. Some are good with a center inclusion setting.
Now, considering you mentioned earlier on, I think in the first half of this conversation, that autistic children can be very normal, look normal, act normal. You can't really tell a difference until maybe you engage them. And I perceive by engagement to mean even a specialist such as yourself, because I could engage such a child and find nothing wrong with that child. Now, that takes me to this question. Does that mean that not all autistic children need special circumstances or or special educational attendment to or attending to, or any inclusion per se. In other words, they can function just about normally in the regular educational system, and no one would notice any difference.
We have lots of them that are running on the same curriculum with their classmates. Meanwhile, they didn't start from there anyway. Maybe they had early intervention, and let's say from that 12, 24 months, and the child could be 6 years now running on the same curriculum. It could be in basic two, and is running on the same curriculum. All the therapist is just doing is, maybe the child has a therapist in school. All the therapist is doing is, okay, break down. If there are some difficulty in comprehension, try to break it down, and the child assimilates. He writes the same exam with them. We have a lot of children like that in our care. So it's very possible that when you engage those kind of children, you might just look at it that, oh, the child might not be a too much talking type, but it will respond to all your questions. That is a child that has been worked on, or a child that is on the mild side of autism. Are you getting it? So it's possible with the intervention, or those that have been on the intervention, when a layman encounters them, might not know that there's a disability of them, but they might not be that they are on the spectrum.
Now, you mentioned that some of your clients or parents or guardians of children with autism are able to find help because of the digital age. They go online, they do research on their own, they Google stuff. But some others may not be that adept to Googling stuff and finding out things on their own. So, what support systems are available uh, to parents, guardians of children with autism?
There are communities. There are some organizations right now, they do sensitization. Like we are doing sensitization in this throughout Utmost Care and Therapy Services. We are doing sensitization in school, communities, hospitals, and what have you again. So when we go, we enlighten them. We tell them the basic features of autism and what it looks like when you have a child like that. Call a helpline and all that. There are communities. There are so many associations right now that are trying to support parents with autism. Call it autism communities. So you see them in there. They share ideas. Oh, this is what my child is presenting, irrespective of the variety in autism. You could get advice from such. I personally, in my organization, we do training for parents. We do training for parents. We enlighten them maybe how to harness your child's behavior or how to improve communication skills. So we do basic training that will help them to also manage the children at home. And that has really gone a long way. We also preach parental involvement. So if they have that little knowledge, all of us working together will recover the child faster.
Um, just as with children with Down syndrome, and I know what the focus today is autism, but autism, Down syndrome, children who come down with impairments of this nature usually suffer a lot in communities. They're usually on the receiving end of bullying and exclusion and things like that. So, how can communities help promote acceptance, inclusion, and make their lives a lot easier?
That's why we are conversing for advocacy. The communities can only assist or accept inclusion if they are knowledgeable. And so when you go to their kings, you go to their dad, you talk to them about, and they have that discussion, they have that awareness. When they see a mom with a child on the spectrum, they can offer a helping hand. Do you get that? We have seen in the church communities where people are not knowledgeable and they get to call the children names. They get to even tell the parents that they are not training their children properly. Can you see how your child is behaving in public? That is coming from an individual living in the community or living in the society who doesn't even understand what ASD is all about. And so we give it a name. You see, the parents are broken down. So advocacy, we have to keep preaching on the air and on the road and all that to make sure that everybody gets that awareness and know what it means to show empathy rather than what's it called, stigmatizing the people, calling the children different kinds of name, lazy child and all that. The child doesn't is stubborn. In fact, that one stubborn is a norm for them. The child is so stubborn. That's a child that is having behavior issue. But the society is not aware. So advocacy, awareness, we have to keep preaching it in the corporate bodies, in the villages, because my major concern right now is those in the remote areas. Let's say the town, people are coming up, they are aware now. You could see one or two talk about autism. But what about those in the remote areas that are still linking the what is happening to the child to maybe the ghost? This is the how the ghosts are punishing this, or this is a child that is a bad child, should be left on the road.
Mm. Okay, we'll come to some of the misgivings or misconceptions regarding autism in a moment. However, I want to focus a bit on some of what you just said. Does it mean that a child who, quote unquote, misbehaves in public or is stubborn? Or for example, you probably have encountered some of the one of such scenarios where maybe on a plane, for example, that child that just won't keep quiet. And I'm not talking a baby now. I'm talking 2 years, 3 year olds maybe, or even four, and just some passengers might consider the child to be constituting a nuisance. No, nothing the mother will do. The hostesses might come, offer all the biscuits and sweets in the world, and people say, "Oh, that child is not well brought up."
Yeah.
That child. Are you saying every such child is possibly autistic?
Not every.
Okay.
There are just some children that have that behavior, but they are not on the spectrum. But when you check very well, when you have done all and you see that the child is not even processing, there are features, characteristics that you will see. You know that this one is not just a child that is spoiled, but these are the child is not understanding the environment. That's why with people, when we have clients that they need to fly at some point, we start prepping the child. There's what we call prepping. You start prepping the child, preparing the child towards that journey. Oh, you're going to be traveling someday. Bring the pictures, all the visuals that you can. You're going to be in the plane. The plane will fly in the air. There are people sitting. So you see that when you do that, the child is already, you are painting the picture of that event to this child. So by the time the real environment comes, it looks to the child like, I've been here. So it's not the first time. So that reaction, that behavior or throwing tantrums, I don't, where are you taking me to? And what is this? With flying in the air is not there because the child has been prepped.
What are some of the? I did mention we'll get to this. What are some of the more common misconceptions that people have of children with autism?
One, they say they are stubborn, they are not well trained, they are lazy, okay? They are just restless. You know, sometimes autism comes with comorbidity. The child will also have ADHD. So where the child got to touch a lot of things, we touch this and jump all over the place. So you see all manner of names.
And I think there's some spiritual connotations as well.
Yes.
I want to touch on that.
Yeah. You get people say this child is possessed. There's a demon in this child. This is not ordinary. So we go to all the churches. We've had parents who say, and when they collected 300K from me, the pastor say, we'll pray, I need to go, and we are here, nothing has happened, you know.
Oh, God is
So,
punishing the parents.
yeah, all those misconceptions
Or
are
somebody
there.
from the village has done something.
But what
Village
is
people.
the real thing is that the child has ASD and there's no cure to it. The only way to manage is therapies, different forms of therapies. Once you have come to accept that, miracles happened. The miracles, I believe in miracles, they happen. But in as much as you want to pray, please look for where you can have therapy interventions for these children.
I'm sure in your professional, work over time, you've had to deal with or handle or work with parents or children who are autistic. And some of your clients, I'm sure, have gone on to do well for themselves. Can you share maybe one instance to
Yes.
inspire some person who's watching or listening to this right now,
Yeah.
where an autistic child has gone on to achieve great things?
Yeah, in Multiple Care and Therapy Services, let me start with us because that's our home. In Multiple Care and Therapy Services Limited, we have had to discharge, I think, about 4 children, and no therapy for them anymore. They are fully in school, they are doing their jobs, and some we are feeding off. That means if we used to do 5 times, we are doing 3 times now to see how the child will cope without the therapist in the 2 days that the therapist is not there, the classroom setting. We have seen people who started with not being able to talk, and today they are talking, they are solving maths, they are reading, they are writing, they are using their language to communicate. Let me also talk of the one I think I read recently. There's this Ghanaian lady, Nana, and 2 other one I read. The one is Nana, one is Prince. They have been employed. I can't pick the city right now, and they are working. The 2 of them are children on the spectrum. One is 22, one is 21, the other one is 45, and they are working in a hotel as hotel attendants. That is the inclusion we are talking about. So they have come so far that you look at it, you streamline. Okay, this is, I want this child to, this is what the child is good with. Let's groom the child on that. Definitely you will have result. You will have result. But one thing that have hindered the result or the child snapping out of it is the consistency. You see some parents say, oh, we have done therapy for 15 years. How many years out of that 15 years were you consistent? Are you getting it? So for a success story to be built, the consistency will be there, the focus will be there, and then you see your child be patient. Be patient. You see the child gradually become that place that you want the child to be.
For us to provide inclusion in our communities and elsewhere, we all have a role to play. And for individuals who would like to help in providing support and raising awareness, improving inclusion, what can this, who might be watching or listening to this right now, what can they do?
Yeah, they can support foundations. They can go to therapy centers. They can go to schools that are inclusive schools and look out for those children that are on the spectrum, not just autism. There are other neurodevelopmental challenges as well. And you could pay up their therapy interventions fee for a couple of years or months. So let's put it that way. You could have a team of friends who come together, like we have, like I said, we have a subsidized pay for those for the low income earner that we just do on our own, in our little way. So you could look out and then sponsor to pay for a child. For the ones that are already on the transition stage, you can sponsor their vocational therapy skill. That's them learning a skill that they can use to make a living out of. It's very, very important. As an individual, as a corporate body, you can do that. It's very, very, is a way of encouraging the children, is a way of encouraging the parents, is a way of encouraging us too that are in the profession, because it's so disheartening to see a child who needs your service, but because of fund, you are not going to help that child because of fund. But if we have the funds available, like we have in the UK, in the United States, where the government subsidize and pay for their bills, parents, it's what we need here in Nigeria.
Thank you very much. And
Thank
that's
you
a
so
wrap
much.
on this edition of Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable. In commemoration of World Autism Awareness Day, we have discussed understanding autism. And thanks to my guest, autism specialist, Mercy Emmanuel Wobu. Mercy, thank you for your time as always.
Thank you, Daya. Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap. Contribute your quota. Let's ensure that we provide a conducive environment for children with autism. Inclusion is very key. And let's play our roles as communities and individuals to help ensure that they are comfortable and they can live the best possible lives that they can. I'm Adedai Elushakin. Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable was brought to you by XPC. Thanks for watching.